Hello there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and I'll be joined momentarily by Stephen Dinan, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor. But first, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Simply go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. And here he is, Stephen Dinan, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Andy.
Well, where do we begin? How about Supreme Court rejects Biden's bid to delay Remain in Mexico policy? Now, this was the Donald Trump plan you and I have talked about, right?
Yeah, and two things, out of this. First is the specific immigration policy. What the court was asked to do by the Biden administration was stay or delay a lower court ruling that found that the Biden administration had cut too many corners and was probably violating immigration law when it got rid of Remain in Mexico. Remain in Mexico is a policy that Trump folks used in particular to solve the 2019 border surge. They figured out all these people are coming here, they're making bogus asylum claims, and we're catching and releasing them, and they gain a foothold here, and their cases take 3, 4, maybe even longer years to be decided. So they're getting a foothold here, and the fact that they're staying and remaining is an incentive for other folks to make the same journey and do the same thing. Well, the Trump administration flexed a part of U.S. law, and it was part of a law written in 1996 that allows the administration to push people back across the border. If they entered without authorization, push them back across the border and make them wait for those immigration proceedings in Mexico. It turned out that most of the folks were like, I'm out of here. I thought I was going to get a foothold in the U.S. I don't want to wait around in Mexico. I don't have a valid claim. I'm gone. And effectively solved the 2019 surge of Central Americans. So the judge, the lower court judge, said, first of all, DHS said that policy was successful. The Biden administration just tried to wave it away without actually engaging that. And any major policy, regulatory change, an administration is supposed to actually engage with the issues and say, here's why we disagree. It can't just be a feeling. It has to be a well thought out sort of vision. And the lower court judge said there was no evidence of that thinking here. It was just a knee-jerk, that's a Trump policy. We're going to go in a different direction, and that's not allowed under the Administrative Procedure Act. So that's the actual specific policy. The much bigger implication to what the court did yesterday is it was a very clear signal. All the legal analysts I've talked with since that decision, very clear signal that the same rules that applied to Donald Trump in terms of administrative procedure, having to actually check all the administrative boxes, and to allowing judges to probe for that, this court is going to make Biden go through those same hoops. And there's been a lot of question about that. There's been a lot of speculation that Chief Justice Roberts, somebody actually termed it Trump law, that he had a special set of rules to stop President Donald Trump and sort of the craziness of Donald Trump. Yet what this new ruling signals is no, that was a very clear signal to judges throughout the Trump era. And now, when an administration tries to do things, they must actually follow, dot the I's and cross the T's and follow all of the regulatory process, or else those actions are invalid. That's a huge impediment for the Biden administration.
Yeah. I'm going to move on to another story. Mailed ballots were most popular last year, but 20 million weren't returned. Wow, this story brings up a lot of questions. First of all, didn't we have 160 million votes cast, a high number?
This is from the Election Assistance Commission, which is sort of the federal oversight agent, how people vote. And it's they survey all the election officials in all the states and the territories, and they come back with a massive report after each federal election saying, here's how folks did, and then they go through all the numbers. More people were able to vote and vote without without real hiccups and problems in last year's election than probably any election in maybe ever, but certainly in modern times. And that's a major finding, right? The turnout, as we're in the middle of this debate, national debate over voter suppression and access to the polls and voter integrity and the ballot integrity. This report says there really weren't anybody who wanted to cast a ballot and was able to follow some pretty basic rules. was able to do that. There were some very small percentage of mail ballots that were rejected. It was less than 1% of the mail ballots mailed back were rejected for reasons, and most of those reasons were voter bungling. So the report says, gosh, voting really was pretty darn easy. As you point out, there is this caveat that the election integrity folks are pointing to that says, okay, but you rush to expand mailed ballots sure left a lot of ballots. Somebody put live ballots, live bullets, live ballots out there in hand, and we don't know what happened to them. That's one part of it, but the other part of it is the fact that we don't know what happened to them. We don't know that they actually got to the right people, and that those people, probably in most cases, the ballot ended up at somebody's house. It was mailed there automatically because they were a registered voter, and they threw it out with the rest of the junk mail, or they saw it and decided, I'm not going to cast that ballot, and they discarded it. But we don't know how often that happened out of those 20 million. It's entirely possible that there are ballots that ended up in other people's hands that never got to the right people. And for that matter, of the 70 million or so ballots that were cast, mail ballots that were cast, there are questions about whether those ended up with the right hand and that the right people actually cast them of their own volition rather than having pressure. That's the big issue with when you lose a ballot, when a ballot goes outside of that closed system of an election polling place. There are so many questions that get raised about what actually happened with that ballot. So yes, it made things a lot easier and more Americans were able to vote than ever before, but it does raise questions about whether they were able to vote in a free and fair way that we expect out of our election.
All right, you have another story. Judge declared mistrial in Avenatti case. Disgraced lawyer wins weeks of delay. Why the mistrial?
So it's a bit of a technical issue. The government, the prosecutor, the Federal Justice Department prosecutors, it turns out, didn't turn over all of the information that they had in their possession to Avenatti that could be exculpatory. And there's something called the Brady rules that require for it to have a free and fair trial. The Brady rules require a prosecutor to turn over anything they have in their possession that might be deemed exculpatory, so that the defense can deal with that and can present that. And so Avenatti had argued that his law firm financial records were seized by the government. Avenatti had access to the servers that they were on a couple of different times, but he argued that, the government actually took the data and put it into a specific database, took the data off the servers and put it into a specific database for their expert to look at, and he should have had access to that database that they gave to their expert. And the government said, he had all the data, and the judge concluded that no, they should have actually turned over the database itself, because that way Avenatti could confront the expert with exactly what he was looking at. Basically it's a way to confront the witness in the most free and fair way for Avenatti. And so, those technical things basically boil down to he wasn't given all the files that the prosecutors had, and so the judge declared a mistrial. It just doesn't really blow things up. It does force the government to go back, and a trial right now is scheduled sometime in mid-October. So it gives Avenatti about 6 weeks of delay before we go back to this trial. It's worth remembering Avenatti had already been convicted of one set of charges in a federal court in New York. This is a wire fraud trial accusing him of having built nearly $10 million out of clients by basically siphoning money off of their settlements. There are also bank fraud charges and a couple of other financial fraud charges also stemming from the same set of facts. And he faces yet another trial back in New York over accusations that Stormy Daniels, his most famous client, the adult actress who claimed to have had an affair with President Trump. So this is a very small legal victory, and he's obviously very excited about it. But his legal jeopardy remains very severe.
Yeah. All right. I know you're just about out of time. What are you working on?
I'm actually working on a story about the new asylum rules at Homeland Security. They've proposed a set of asylum rules and have already started that would basically shift who decides asylum cases from immigration judges to asylum officers at Homeland Security. So they've shifted from judges, the Justice Department, to Homeland Security. Critics say that that's basically a way that the Homeland Security officers are more lenient on this sort of stuff. In particular, though, the real question is whether those Homeland Security officers are going to be able to spot fraud in those cases. So I'm working on a story looking at the prevalence of fraud in the asylum system and how much, basically, whether those asylum officers are trained to actually go looking for that, and whether the government is planning on hiring enough asylum fraud detectors to help out.
All right, I'm going to let you go. Folks, read all of Stephen Dinan's stories at WashingtonTimes.com. As always, thanks, Stephen.
My pleasure, Andy.
Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to WashingtonTimes.com/Andy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Again, go to WashingtonTimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.